with us, we have a lot of questions about the feelings GPS.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Always. Okay.
So one question was about sibling dynamics, when one sibling is kind of exacerbating another sibling's orange or red zone. What's an effective technique to help mitigate those conflicts?
Separation, number one answer on the board. With siblings, there's a wonderful book if you have siblings and if you have siblings that are battling. There's a book, a parenting book called by Wolf. Last name is Wolf, W-O-L-F-F. And Wolf has a book called Mom, Jason's Breathing on Me. Okay, great title. And one of the wise tactics that Wolf talks about is separation. Kids often will rope parents into playing the role of judge and jury. You know, they're fighting and they suck you in, and they want you to come and take their side, right? But the secret is that's code for who do you love more? So if you rush in there and solve it, even if you get all the facts, if you solve it, then often, yes, whoever you side with feels like, all right, score, I won, that's awesome. And by the way, my parent loves me better than you. But then the other person feels jilted, hey, that's no fair, and so they want revenge later. So you can actually feed sibling rivalry. So the suggestion from that book is, listen, if kids are battling, if they're going to war, if it's still kind of productive arguing and they're working it out, let it play out. You can let that go and see if they can solve it. If it's successful, if child A is escalating child B, parent swoops in, doesn't solve it for them, but says, all right, the two of you apart. And so if you know that one person is the more irritable one and the other one, if you can intuit from the whole story, from what you heard, just separate, okay, the two of you, different rooms. You can be very fair if you have the two of them leave the same room, right? That's fair. If you really know that one person was the instigator, you can have that one person leave, okay, the two of you apart. And here's the message with that. Okay, 15 minutes apart, you're welcome to come back together, right? And when you return, I expect that you're gonna work this out. If you can't, you're gonna be apart again. And the secret is that most kids actually want to be together. They want to play if they're in the mood to play. If they're not in the mood to play, if they are in orange or red phases, they should be separated, right? The person who's in orange could really use the space. And certainly in the red phase, if you can't have the red phase person get to a quiet spot, then it's actually helpful to clear the room. Now that is obviously not fair to the non-melting down people. But again, if you have a big kid who is melting down and you can't move them, then you really pretty much have to clear the room until that is de-escalated. Then people can return when the child is back to yellow or purple phase.
That actually leads perfectly into the next question, which is about kids who tantrum so much that they break and destroy things, items in the house. I might have personal experience with this with one of my own children. So I think the question is both, how do you handle it in the moment? And then how do you handle it after the tantrum is over and the child has returned to that purple or yellow phase?
Yeah, this is one of the hardest things. You care about your stuff, right? You may have expensive stuff. And so you don't want destruction. At the same time, if a child's raging, if you start running around, grabbing stuff out of his or her hand, they're running to something else probably to pick something else up. So you can escalate things if you start running around trying to pull stuff out of the child's hand. I've heard that from parents and I've seen that live as well. And so if possible, if you see that your child is going into red phase, you might quickly scan the room and be like, okay, here are the 5 things that are most valuable. I'm gonna whisk around the room and grab them and move them out of here. So you really might scan the room just to create safety. If you can't get the child to another room, if they're standing there looking to grab anything, so that's the first step, the first idea. And then the second piece is you have to keep yourself safe. One thing I didn't do with Sam is talk about the safety zone. And I'm going to demonstrate that right now. I'm going to back this up. Okay. And so here I am. If I'm a tantruming child, I'm going to be in profile. Everything in front of me is the danger zone. I can kick, right? I can pick up a metal water bottle and throw it at you or swing it at you. So everything in front of me is the danger zone. Safe places are the side of me, right? And certainly the back of me. It's hard for me to be aggressive behind me. So, so you want to be cognizant of that. If you have a child who's a thrower, you want to make sure that you are not in range of the throwing. So again, backing away, as I said, is one part. If you get more distance, you'll have better reaction time. If you can sort of move yourself a little bit to the side and the child's throwing, then you can keep yourself safe. But then ultimately, it is really hard if there's someone who's fully in the red phase and they're being destructive. Really, they have to play it out. And if you can just make sure that the most valuable things are safe, then again, red phase is going to rise, crash, and fall. And we see it as I talked about. And then on the back end, when the child's completely calm and your child shows all the signs, regular tone of voice, energy levels back, then you say, you know what? That was a doozy. That was a really big one. You broke some things. And you're going to have to be a part of fixing them and making amends. So this is the part where we're not stigmatizing the anger. We're not saying you're grounded for a month. No, you want to have the consequence really be directly related to the event. So if a child, punches a hole in the wall, they're going to be there either helping you repair it, or if there's a repairman, perhaps they contribute money. They work it off, and they have to be there, and they can learn a skill. And maybe the parent can learn a skill watching the repair person. I couldn't repair a hole in the wall myself. I would need to be there with my child, investing the time in making amends, and I might have the child work it off, actually.
What about an older child who might lash out by cursing or screaming at their parents? At what level of repercussions, if any, from a consequence perspective in parenting, would you recommend?
Yeah. So how I mentioned destigmatizing and decriminalizing anger. Remember, red phase is a loss of control. Their neurology has been overwhelmed. Their dino brain has taken control, and it's as if they're a caged, cornered animal that feels threatened. That's the way they're acting. None of this is their fault. So your child may say the worst things. They might say, I hate you, you're the worst parent ever. They might turn on themselves and say, I wish I were dead, I could kill myself. They might curse. All of these things are expressions of someone who is not in their right mind. Right? They are not reasonable or rational. That is not your same child. Your child's been taken over and hijacked by that dino brain. So therefore, do not respond. Do not take it personally, because again, that's the dino brain talking. So if you respond and get defensive, or you say, that was disrespectful, you are escalating it and you're going to prolong that tantrum. You need to back off, give more space, and don't stare down the child. That'll help it to abate faster. Second, I would do targeted ignoring of that. No one's really getting hurt. It's a loss of control. If your child's cursing you out when they're in the orange phase, they're basically in control, or the yellow phase, that's disrespect. That's actually behavior where they still have control. If your child is that out of control and they're screaming things, I would do targeted ignoring. And at the end, 90% of the time, kids are like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. And also, while we're on the topic, so targeted ignoring for words, nothing's actually getting hurt there in that loss of control. And again, our whole point is prevention. Okay, you lost that one. You slipped into the red phase. That one got past you. But next time, right back on using all of your prevention, right? All your tools. But while we're talking about it, I did want to say one more thing about when kids turn their aggression on themselves. If a child is banging his or her head, most of the time, they will not hurt themselves. If they bang once that's too hard, and they go like bang, bang. The first two don't hurt, but then they bang their head on a wall or something. The third time goes, they're gonna stop. That actually will break through. Like, ow. They go, and you'll see them. I've seen kids do that. They give themselves a start and they go, oh, I'm not doing that again. And they will stop themselves. So sometimes that's out of control, but it also draws you in closer because any caring parent would want to put your hand in between the head and the wall, but now you're involved again, right? So my recommendation, and again, practice this live myself during timeouts, during meltdowns at Camp Pegasus, is to give them space, and the child will not hurt themselves. The first couple bangs might be for effect or an impulse, and they will stop. And then if it's verbal hurting of themselves, if they're saying, you know, I wish I were dead, I'm the worst person, the worst kid, I wish I were never born. Again, we have to remember that your child is not in his or her right mind. If you ask the child, you know, an hour after the meltdown ends, are you still feeling that way? Do you really mean that? 90% of the time, your child will say, no, I was just mad, right? If a child is in the purple, yellow, or orange phases, and they're telling you that they're suicidal or want to hurt themselves, I would take that incredibly seriously because they are in control and they're telling you what their thought process is and what's going on inside them. If someone is frothing at the mouth in a tantrum, on some level, they might be saying that to shock you, to hurt you, or to scare you. But again, it's not their rational mind. You still want to bring that up with their therapist. If your child's prone to that, I would recommend strongly that you engage with a therapist, and for sure. But over time, you'll see, if you check in with your child during a time of peace afterwards, if your child says, no, absolutely, I'm fine. I really don't feel that way at all. You say, are you safe? Can you be safe? You know, your child's fine, then you really can believe it if they say that when they're calm. So that's some, nonetheless, if your child does get into these modes, I would suggest you absolutely do engage with a therapist for sure.